Hello and welcome to the Legal Edition. I'm your host, Attorney Mary Kay Elloian. Our show topic today is the CarbonNation, rolling back climate change one state at a time. Our guest is State Senator Michael Barrett. He is a Harvard College graduate, a Massachusetts state legislator, a lawyer, and advocate for a healthy environment. He serves as Senate Chair of the Legislative Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy, and is an outspoken advocate of renewable energy and reducing carbon emissions. Through his advocacy, the Massachusetts revenue-neutral plan to combat climate change is now making its way to the governor's desk. The first state in the U.S. to rein in climate change by putting a price on carbon pollutants. Senator Barrett believes the Massachusetts plan will serve as a model for all states that embrace the need for clean energy, clean water, and a clean environment for their citizens while providing energy, jobs, and financial incentives to do so. Let's welcome Senator Michael Barrett. Welcome.
Happy to be here, Mary Kay. I love your show. I love the Legal Edition. I'm always pleased to be here.
Thank you so much.
I do want to introduce the idea that the state Senate is the first legislative body in the entire United States to put a price on carbon. But we didn't get the House of Representatives to go along with us this spring in 2018. We're going to give them another chance next year, and I think we are then going to be able to put something on the governor's desk. So we're halfway there. That itself is real progress. We've got more progress to make.
Now, tell us about your plan. How does it work?
You know, the big problem, although we find it hard to discuss, is that using polluting fossil fuels is just too darn inexpensive relative to the harm that it costs. And there's a complicated but fascinating economic story that involves a fellow in about 100 years ago, in fact, watching a train move across the English countryside. This was an economist. And he said, you know, that smoke pouring out the stack is making people in London sick. That's smog, also a problem in other industrialized cities in the UK. And yet the cost of the coal driving the locomotive doesn't reflect these enormous healthcare expenditures that even 100 years ago we were having to make. Why can't we have a price that's an honest price of the coal in that case, and that reflects the public health impact of our getting energy in this particular way? So that idea of carbon pricing really is just an attempt to fully price not only the cost of extracting oil, refining it, transporting it to Massachusetts, retailing it at the pump, but the health effects of using, let's say, regular gasoline, which includes a lot of people getting asthma. You know, Massachusetts, because we have a lot of traffic congestion, a lot of stop and go
That we do.
commuting, has the highest asthma rates of almost any state in the United States. We're getting a lot of particulate matter blown our way from the Midwest, too. So we've got a real public health issue here when we use too much fossil fuel, and one solution, and this is the essence of carbon pricing, is to have the price reflect these healthcare costs. Economists know, actually we all know, in a common sense sort of way, that when the price of anything goes up to reflect its true costs, we find a way of using less. We're naturally frugal.
Right.
We're traditional in that sense. All of us contain a little bit of that Yankee philosophy. We respond to higher prices by using less, even without the government having to tell us so. So we are trying to build an honest price for gasoline, natural gas, and coal, knowing that ingenuity will take over and we'll find substitutes once the price is a complete one.
Now, yeah, I understand that completely, but can you explain the actual revenue-neutral model?
Well, the problem with the idea I just spelled out to you is that some people can't afford a higher price. Some of us can, many of us can't. So the issue then arises, what do you do if you put a carbon fee on a gallon of gasoline and you collect the money and the fee equals the total honest price? What do you do with all the money you collect? There are two choices. You can spend it for government programs, and I know people in good faith feel that that's the decent use of the money. Or you can say, you know what, this is a regressive tax, potentially. We're extracting it from people regardless of their ability to pay. If we send it back to people in the form of a check, it's essentially all the money you collect
A
divided
rebate?
by all the population.
A rebate?
A rebate. If you send it back in the mail to people as a rebate, here's the fascinating thing. Turns out that in Massachusetts, the richer we are, the more energy we use. You know, we've got the third car in the driveway. Maybe we have a summer place down in the Cape or somewhere else. Poor people don't do this, but middle class and upper middle class people manage to. So if you collect money based on fossil fuel consumption, you're collecting more of it from people of means than without. If you rebate it all, just on an average, the people who have paid less in fee are going to get back actually more in rebate than they will have initially paid, because poor people underconsume a little bit in terms of energy. You can protect poor people and working class people if you rebate all of it. Those of us who have a little more money, consume a little more, our rebate might not equal the fees we will have paid over the course of the year, but people of modest means will more than recover their money on average. So you can protect working people, protect poor people, still put a fee on the pollution that, in a sense, all of us cause whenever we overuse one of these dirty fuels.
Now, how will this affect businesses? How is that model?
Well, the same thing applies. We want businesses thinking about conservation. We want businesses struggle with energy efficiency, getting more bang for the buck, if you will, from a purchase of, again, of a fossil fuel. Honest pricing of fossil fuels encourages all of us to become more efficient and more thoughtful about the energy we use. And by the way, this sort of way of thinking really has to extend to other aspects of our lives. I happen to be a strong proponent of our doing away with petrochemical products that are single-use. We essentially use a lot of chemicals and a lot of petroleum when we make single-use paper bags, the sort that we get handed at CVS or Walgreens when we walk home with a convenience item or two. When we use single-use water bottles, Poland Spring bottles, we're using a product...
Or any bottle for that matter.
We're using, or plastic straw. We're using a product that only has an intended single use, but that's going to take 100 years to degrade in a landfill, and that took a lot of energy to make in the first place. So when I talk about energy efficiency, or sustainability is a buzzword we hear about these days, it contains an important truth. Sustainability is about our finding a way, sometimes just by being ingenious and frugal in a good sense, to make sure that we're not needlessly using oil or coal or natural gas to create products which we're going to use once and dispose of. Of course, actually, they're going to wind up in the throat systems, the respiratory systems of marine mammals, or otherwise poisoning us indirectly. Somehow we have to engineer a different set of values around that.
It sounds like it, because we all know our oceans are really being polluted to the extent that animals are dying, and our oceans are rising. The temperature is rising and is more because of all the pollutants and the phosphorus.
God knows we need plastics and plastic products, but I want them to be multiple use. If they're single-use items, then the fossil fuels that go into making them, the petrochemicals, if you will, are a waste. You know, I'm sponsoring legislation to create a statewide ban on styrofoam.
That's a big one.
Styrofoam, the takeout container that we all enjoy when we go to the beach and get takeout for lunch or dinner, is a product that is highly resistant to degradation. It doesn't decompose in a landfill. It sticks around forever. We see it as litter by the road, but really, even when we throw it in the trash can, it doesn't go anywhere useful. We've got to find a way again to take styrofoam, polystyrene, a petrochemical-based product, out of the waste stream if it's only going to be used once. Somehow, we have to find products that more readily decompose and become earth once again, as these products do not.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your plan again. I know it's been used in Canada. Tell us about that. How is that one working?
So this is a classic. British Columbia, Vancouver, if you will, in Canada, about the same size as Massachusetts, about 6.5 million people. 10 years ago, a conservative government in British Columbia, for a whole bunch of complicated political reasons I won't go into, decided that it needed to impose carbon pricing. And it hit on this revenue neutral idea that I've been talking about for Massachusetts. And the public didn't like it. The legislators went along with the premier anyhow. Premier is British Columbia's governor, in effect. But the public was very ambivalent because they couldn't understand it. It sounded too good to be true, too complicated, new idea. Everyone's naturally and understandably wary. But once the voters got back their first rebate check, once they saw real money in their pocket and they realized that the government wasn't going to hold on to the money, but was going to rebate it to them instead, angst started to decline. The public grew to love carbon pricing because they loved those rebate checks, but they also liked the fact that BC was cleaner. The air was cleaner than other provinces in Canada. During this entire period that carbon pricing has existed in BC, the local economy has grown better than the Canadian economy as a whole.
Wow.
You can have jobs and economic growth and fight climate change. We did a study. We have a very complicated computerized model of the Massachusetts economy that I was able to tap into, and we asked about my bill. Interestingly enough, carbon pricing in Massachusetts is job positive for this reason. Can you name a single refinery in Massachusetts?
No,
Do we have any oil wells?
not to my knowledge.
How about coal mines?
I don't think so.
Do we have any natural gas fields? No. So we're importing all that stuff. We're handing over money to North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, maybe the Middle East. We're not making that stuff here. When you have to import a product made somewhere else, the price you pay for the imported product doesn't create jobs in Massachusetts, but jobs somewhere else. You cut back on those imports by being more energy efficient, more thoughtful about the things you consume that are petroleum based. You're actually leaving money in people's pockets, especially if there's a rebate, remember. And that money, and here's the key thing, gets redirected into a purchase at the local supermarket. You spend that money to equip your kids to go back to school in the fall. Reduced spending on imports means more money available for local retail. That's why it's job positive. So I can demonstrate to you that we can fight climate change in the most effective way possible, which is a price on carbon, and create more jobs for the state. You don't get that kind of opportunity too often, but it exists with respect to this idea, and that's a terrific thing.
No, I know the states are going to have to get on board because what the federal government is doing now.
I don't think Trump's going to do this for us.
No, he's not going to do it for us. In fact, we're talking about bringing things in. There's tariffs now to be that actual factor into the equation, which is going to cost everyone here more. But on the contrary side, they'll say, well, then you got to do more oil exploration here. And they're not counting the ill effects, the health effects. You know, the person with lung cancer who's been working in the petrochemical fields. So, you know, these are things that have to be looked at, especially in light of the climate accord in France and pulling out of that.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that in the States, picking up the slack?
Last year in 2017, I went to the annual International Climate Summit. The famous one was 2015 in Paris, but there was one last year in Bonn, Germany. There's one this year in November in Poland. There, all the countries of the world, with the exception, regrettably, of the United States, wrestle with a program to reduce carbon emissions, to combat climate change. And in most countries in Western Europe, other industrialized nations, they're using a form of carbon pricing in the way that I'd like to see the U.S. adopt, and Massachusetts lead the way in adopting. So there is international efforts going on, but if the United States is going to abdicate and really not even show up for these annual climate summits except in some sort of observer capacity.
And the U.S. is one of the major polluters.
Then the individual states have got to take over. I was representing Massachusetts, but to their credit, representatives of the Baker administration were in Bonn, Germany last year too. There were Californians there, people from Washington State, from Oregon. So the states are rediscovering federalism. You know, federalism underlies the U.S. Constitution, and progressives have been wary of it because 40 years ago it meant that Orville Faubus could stand in the doorway at the University of Arkansas and prevent integration. That was states' rights once upon a time. These days, everything's being turned on its head, but in a good way. States' rights means that Massachusetts must move forward in concert with other states when Washington abdicates its responsibility to keep people healthy and save the planet.
And for those people who are watching who don't know, Massachusetts has a Republican governor, and he's on board with making our state healthy to live in.
Yeah, that's right. This is not a partisan issue. The Massachusetts State Senate voted to put a price on carbon unanimously. This was my carbon pricing concept this past spring. That includes 7 of my Republican colleagues. Every one supports putting a price on carbon done smartly, which is what I advocate. So we can put together, this is not any longer for Massachusetts an issue that divides conservatives and liberals, people who believe in a strong government versus those who believe in a weaker one. All of us can unite. This carbon pricing stuff doesn't require a state bureaucracy. The Department of Revenue sends me a rebate check or collects my state income tax one way or the other every year. So we've got the apparatus in place that can collect the carbon fee or tax, rebate it. The last thing I'll mention, it's an important point politically, and I hope it will put the Republicans at ease. Under the state constitution here in Massachusetts, a tax is a charge that results in money that the state government spends for general operations. If you rebate it out constitutionally, and importantly, it's not a tax, it truly is a user fee. So I'm in favor of rebating it all, avoiding the dreaded T word, and truly legally, not just semantically, making this a rebatable fee that the taxpayer sees back in her pocket after her behavior has been affected by seeing the higher price at the pump. There's a way to do this well that can unite members of all parties.
And for those who don't know, who are watching outside of Massachusetts, we have led the way in solar use here in the state. Just tell us a little bit about that before we sign off.
Yeah, well, we've done, I can tell you, I got a cold knock on my door a couple of years ago as a young person going door to door in my neighborhood. I'd never laid eyes on him before, but he represented a nonprofit company working with Lexington, but also with the state of Massachusetts, offering to install solar panels, and I, after due diligence, said yes. And I pay zero on my electric bill 5 months out of every 12, but not enough of my neighbors have taken advantage. Again, it's a leap. It involves taking time away from your family or your job to think about making an investment in your house. We're leading in solar in many respects, but we need many more folks in Bedford, Lexington, Concord, Burlington to take the additional step. And I look forward as chair of the Energy Committee to working with Bedfordians on this issue for the next year.
And what about the wind, offshore wind? How's that working out?
You know, it's working very well, and this is another place where we're really leading. The leading states in the United States with respect to windmills are the plain states. So you see a lot of electricity generated using windmills in Texas, onshore, South Dakota, North Dakota. Massachusetts doesn't have a lot of real estate to devote to windmills onshore. Offshore, though, we have an ocean, and you can locate these things out of beyond the horizon so they don't pollute your view from Martha's Vineyard and still generate a lot of electricity. Right now, we are the leading state in the United States on offshore wind, and we want to see that continue and grow.
Because this model is something that any coastal state can do with offshore wind, and obviously with the sun shining across the U.S., still shining, you know, solar is an option as well.
Yeah, now there are challenges. We don't, if this stuff were easy, we would have done it before. The challenge to wind and to solar is that it's intermittent. You need to be able to, you can't store energy right now. So you need to be able to generate it at the moment you need it across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That means in the depth of winter, when the sun may not be shining, at 6 p.m. when it's dark and you've come home from work and you turn on all the lights in your house and start cooking dinner, you need the electricity there at that second. And solar isn't necessarily at this point going to be able to help you. That's why it's so important for Massachusetts to go into a new economic area. and that's battery storage. We need to take the tiny batteries that work perfectly well right now to power your small consumer gadget and create batteries effectively that can store the energy generated from your roof solar system during the day for use at night. And the engineering schools in Massachusetts are starting to become nationwide leaders and are beginning to create a lot of jobs to figure out this storage issue. That's critical to making solar and wind a universal solution for us with respect to electric power.
Yeah,
and we're going to get there.
Yes, we are. I've talked to folks at MIT and Harvard.
Good for
working
you.
in the science
I love your show. You do a great job.
And they're on their way. So we're getting there. So this notion of oil exploration offshore and hurting the coastal communities.
We don't need it.
We don't need it.
And the big business consideration there is tourism. For you to be drilling offshore and to risk the sort of oil spills that have been catastrophic for certain portions of Alaska would devastate fishing, the fishing business, the fishing industry, and it would also devastate the shore that we know and love throughout New England. So we have to put a stop to Mr. Trump's plans to put oil derricks within sight of Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah, putting oil before health and people.
And if we can do this wind piece right, it's wind and storage, it's solar and storage, it's hydro and storage. If we can get the clean energy source together with battery-driven storage, we've got a total solution, and that's the direction in which we have to go.
Well, I mean, this is mind-boggling, and thank you so much for putting so much effort into it. I know that you've put a lot of work and hours, and so hasn't the other folks in our legislature.
I can tell you, people in Bedford are very into this stuff. I hear from folks organized around the churches in this community a lot about these issues, so they would light a fire under my fanny if I didn't do it myself.
Well, for those folks who are watching, Bedford is in the greater Boston area of Massachusetts, and we have MIT Lincoln Labs, and we have a lot of great folks who are in...
It's a science-driven community in a lot of ways.
Very science-driven. So hopefully our model can be a model for the rest of the nation.
Hopefully.
Thank you so much, Senator Barrett.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. I want to thank Massachusetts State Senator Michael Barrett for sharing his insights and opinions on combating climate change with clean energy policies to bring healthy environment and prosperity to states across the nation. I also want to thank you, our viewers, for tuning in. For more information on today's topic and our guests, visit the Legal Edition online at thelegaledition.com. As always, this information is for general educational purposes only. It is not to be construed or relied upon as professional or legal advice, and please consult a qualified practitioner as to your legal business or professional needs. And don't forget, subscribe online, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.